Hello and welcome to SBN Spotlight, your weekly market report from Scottish Business Network. In this series, we speak to experts from across the Scottish Business Network community and focus on one of three things: a sector, a region, or an opportunity that you should be looking at in 2026. This week, I sat down with Peter Barclay of Geek Scotland as we talked about the state of sales in 2026, the cultural shifts that he's hoping to see in Scottish businesses, and most importantly, the Scottish Growth Expo that's taking place on May 26th at Hampden. Well, Peter Barclay, thank you so much for joining me. If you could just start by introducing yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
So I am one of the co-founders of Geek Scotland. We have been in business for 4 years now. My background's sort of small family business and corporate. We are working to change the way the world sees sales. We think it's an honourable profession. It should be something that people take a bit more seriously. It's great to get you see university courses where people can go and study sales to drive a kind of ethical and sustainable sales. But that's what Sales Geek's all about. We work for businesses as part-time sales directors, but also as sales trainers and sales coaches. And it's to take the stigma away from sales being pushy, sort of arrogant people who are only of their own self-interest, to really drive the thought process that sales around relationships, it's around the problem solving, and it's to create that sustainable brand for yourself. So that's what we try to do.
So it's interesting you talk about that stigma actually, because that's what we'd ask you about. You've had a long career in sales, but in a previous conversation, you mentioned that even you were hesitant to say you worked in sales. So I wondered, why do you think there's a sort of stigma against the concept of sales, and how should we be perceiving it instead?
I don't think it's me. I mean, you touched on that. I was very privileged. I went to a good school. I have 12 boys, guys, men that I'm still friendly with now. All doctors, GPs, engineers, so they're very sort of prescribed careers. And probably for the first 25, 30 years of my career, I would go to stag do's, weddings, nights out, and try to describe what I did without actually using the word sales. Even to the point of I went to a 30th university reunion in June, and my best man, who obviously knows me probably better than anybody else, and I started talking about Sales Geek, and I started talking about what I did, and he instantly kind of, now I know what you do. You're a salesperson. Now, for me, in the sales process, to drive change, you need to tap into an emotion and tap into a feeling. And I think the trouble with the sales is that it's usually tagged them a very negative feeling of going somewhere to buy something and you're persuaded or manipulated to buy something you don't need, you can't afford, you don't really want. And there's that moment of kind of joy of signing the contract because you think, hey, I didn't think I could afford this. But unfortunately, that is also labeled very heavily with that moment of dread when you walk out of the showroom and you jump into your car, and on the way home, you're suddenly thinking, well, I don't really need that. I can't really afford that. How am I going to pay for that? And that feeling that is associated with the word sales is what people stick to sales. And it's all about you're being manipulated into something that you don't really want to do, which is actually the very negative part of sales. So for us, and the one thing we talk about a lot in Sales Geek world is, there's a product expert and an industry expert. You're there to build relationships and build trust. And that on the occasion means turning around to customers and saying no. And if it's not the right product, not the right service for them or for you, the best thing you can do is actually turn around to your customer and say, on this occasion, I don't feel this is right for you. Because that builds a sustainable brand, doesn't it? It gives you that aura of being that product expert, and therefore that person will go away from that experience with a really positive feeling rather than the negative thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I had a phone call with someone last week who was sort of trying to help me save some money on energy. He's sort of going, you should try this supplier instead. And he started the conversation with, it's not a sales call because, so you don't feel pressured. And I thought, I'm on here because I'm ready to buy something and switch. So it sort of feels like it, but it's weird that that's almost like to try and reassure me, telling me this isn't a sales. Whereas in actual fact, that's what I'm interested in because I'm having the conversation.
I mean, and that's the thing, you could be a good problem solver, could be able to take somebody's challenges away. And quite often those challenges, especially in small businesses when it's related to sales, because generally sales is related to revenue. Generally customers reach out to you because they have a revenue problem. And that's become very urgent because that's now affecting the bottom line, so it drives more profitability in the business. It's an incredibly emotive topic, something that people are hugely passionate and emotional about. Now, one of the things we teach small businesses that it's okay to use sales techniques and sales processes and sales language to close deals, because there is no point sitting there as a product expert talking about how you can resolve situations, but never actually getting to the point where you get the sales so you can solve the problem, fail to close. So there's a combination, the combination of using sales in a positive way, using relationship in a positive way, and tying those two things together, because there's absolutely no point in talking to somebody who's got a massive challenge that you can help with and you never get the sale and you never close them. Completely pointless.
Exactly. And on that sort of topic of helping businesses who are looking to do sales, you've got the Scottish Growth Expo coming up at Hampden on May 26th. Now, before we get into the event itself, from what you're seeing in terms of your preparation for that and the conversations you've had this year, are there any sort of sales levers that Scottish businesses are failing to pull?
Oh, I mean, there's loads. I think, it's very easy for small businesses and for businesses in the whole to look outwardly to try to find out a reason. It's very difficult to actually turn around and say, do you know what, the reason why we're not growing is our fault. So I always say reflect on yourself, especially nowadays with what's happening in the world with elections and wars and all that kind of stuff, which we won't go into because that's a completely different conversation. But you'll never affect them. You can never control them. So the norm in business nowadays is that change is a norm, and the unexpected is the norm. So we have to start shaping business and business strategies to be flexible and nimble in that way. The second part that businesses always come to me when they want to grow is they want to find new customers. It always seems to be the default position. Let's go find more customers. Where for me, first stage is always looking at your current customers. How are you managing them? How are you servicing them? How are you interacting with them? How do you make them as sticky as possible? And how do you get, as much money out of them? And that sounds very salesy, kind of manipulative. But actually looking and going visiting and seeing what's happening in the business, understand the business and understand how you can support them better. It's actually the best place to start for growing your business, because they're the people who trust you. They already know you, so it's easy sales. And that it does push on to why we started the Growth Expo, because when times get tough, and I've been in the construction sector for 30 odd years, so I went through the kind of financial crash in like 260, 278, and businesses become very insular. They lock themselves in the office and sit behind spreadsheets and manage their teams when there is a crisis in the world happening. Where for me, and the best opportunities I've ever had in my life is actually breaking that stigma and getting out and meeting people and actually talking to people about what challenges you're facing. And that drives collaboration, it drives innovation. And from that, really creative business and sales solutions happen, and therefore businesses grow, with AI and the wars and everything like that. We need to be nimble. We need to be able to support each other, collaborate, and grow. That's why I know Fraser Morrison, you're a member of SBN, in your organisation. But I was talking to him, he came across and did a podcast for us a few months ago. And the Scots as a race, we're very humble. We're not particularly good at promoting ourselves. But if you actually look at what we've done historically through hundreds of years, we've gone to different countries and we've driven innovation, we've driven collaboration, we've driven growth in all the countries we go to, because we go there and we build relationships and we build trust, and we're not particularly outwardly going. So people generally like us. So for me, just think about that. We can do that through centuries of work. Why do we not do it more now?
Well, that leads on nicely to another question I wanted to talk to you about, which is around this sort of the culture, perhaps, within Scottish businesses. So you speak to Scottish companies who want to grow their business every day. What is one cultural shift that you want to see in Scottish boardrooms in 2026 that you think will help companies with their sales?
We go back to that word collaboration a lot. Um, my best careers in my life, and I've been in big corporate, billion-pound organizations, and I've been in small family businesses. But the best opportunities I've got that's come into the business is to speak to people in my industry, and that's suppliers, customers, and also competitors. Competitors are facing the same challenges as you are, and quite a lot of time actually really understanding who your ICP, your ideal client profile is, exactly what you do and how you do it, and also understanding who your client's ideal client profile is and what they do and how they do it enables, and very much when we get back to the Growth Expo, I believe firmly that I should be able to stand next to any other sales trainer that's in the country. I should understand why I'm different from them. I understand why they're better than me and why I'm better than them, and who his client is and who my ideal client is. And by that, you can actually foster good collaboration with everybody. So I think there's a suspicion in sales that you need to be secretive and you need to be competitive, where I actually think it's completely opposite. It's just get out and speak to people. And it's exactly why we have the SBN as a part of sports within the Expo, is because what you guys do worldwide is exactly that. Just go and speak to people, go and meet people, go and collaborate, go and talk about challenges and see what happens.
It's almost back to your point about companies becoming insular. It also means not talking to the competition and see what the competition's up to.
AI and the wars and supply chain issues and all that sort of stuff. You need to be nimble. You need to be flexible in what you do. And your competitors, they're facing the same challenges. Now, on the surface of it, your competitor you compete with, what is a competitor you compete with them? But then if you look at things like supply chain, things like networking, things like all that kind of stuff, there's no reason why you can't work with these people really closely. And I'd say some of my best business relationships have started from theoretical competitors. I mean, even in Sales Geek, I started Sales Geek in Scotland 4 years ago, almost the day, I think actually 16th of May, so yeah, pretty much the day. And I started Glasgow West. That's what I had. Now, Davey Sned, my now business partner, he joined and owned Glasgow East. So there was this invisible line dividing our two businesses. Now, we could very easily from day one traded as two separate entities, not spoken to each other, seen ourselves as competitors. But from day one, we realized, in actual fact, Sales Geek Glasgow, as a brand we traded in, was a lot stronger. We were a lot stronger together rather than competing with each other. And that's what fostered Sales Geek Glasgow. 18 months after that, became Sales Geek Scotland. And now, we're thriving business across all of Scotland and running things like the Expo and Hampden, where we're hopefully going to get up to 500 people. And that fosters from collaboration. Now, we could have quite easily seen ourselves as competitors on day one and never spoken to each other, but we're a lot stronger together.
Exactly. And that's the final thing I wanted to ask you about as well, actually, was the Scottish Growth Expo on May 26th. So for anyone who's watching this, who's thinking about wanting to grow their sales but haven't booked a ticket yet, tell them what they could expect. Why should they come along?
But I always believe in starting these things with what I saw the problem was. Now, when I started the business 4.5 years ago, we are a franchise business and we were starting in England, and the stereotypical view that Scotland is just treated as a different county in England, so we do everything exactly the same as the English do. But very quickly, I realised that there's a different government, different transportation system, different support network, all that sort of thing. So I had to kind of forge a new path. One of my challenges was I looked as a business owner across the kind of business landscape across Scotland. And there's some amazing organisations out there, and thankfully quite a lot of them now supporting us with Expo. The places like IOD and FSB and the Chambers of Commerce and SBN and the banks and all this sort of things. So some amazing opportunities. But there was nobody there signposting me really to who could help me. And it was almost like I had to speak to each individual organisation. So for me, what I wanted to try to do is try to solve that problem. I wanted to create a room where all businesses and all supporting organisations could be under one. So we're incredibly diverse. General events are almost 50-50 split between men and women, which is awesome. And we like to create that safe, open environment that doesn't matter whether you're a startup, you're a university student, you're somebody who's venturing out on your sales career, or you're chief executive of a £1 billion organisation or a sales director of a £100 million organisation. It really doesn't matter what type of business you are. But what we want to do is to create a place where all the supporting organisations are under one roof. You can come, you can collaborate, you can learn, you can speak with and listen to industry leaders, and also we really tap into kind of the resilience of our talkers and the speakers about how difficult their journey be and the highs and lows, and we're very much about being authentic and being honest. So for us, it's get people in the room to learn, get people in the room to meet each other, collaborate, network, talk to each other, and get the supporting organisations in the same room, and all of that together fosters a really good opportunity for growth. So that's fundamentally what the expo is about. But it comes from my original problem was I spent hours and hours and hours searching these organisations, trying to find the right ones for me, and I couldn't. So for me, trying to get them under one roof is the primary goal. I do believe the Scots, we're great race. We love working with each other. We love collaborating. So why do we foster that more in the Scottish business landscape? And that is what we're trying to do with the expo.
Brilliant. And Scottish Business Network will be there. Our chair's one of the speakers, and we'll have a table as well. So if anyone's coming along, we will see you there. But in terms of this episode, Peter, thank you very much. So thank you very much again to Peter for sitting down with me, and thank you very much everyone for watching. If you're an SBN member who thinks they have some insights that they'd like to share, get in touch. We're looking for as many people as possible to feature in this series. So if you've got something interesting to talk about in a sector, a region, or an opportunity you're excited about, then drop an email to scott@sbn.scot. And if you're not a member and want to learn more, go to sbn.scot to learn how you can become part of this global network of Scottish business leaders around the world.